At the intersection of true crime and real estate, you'll find Crime Estate. I'm Heather.
And my name is Elena. As real estate agents and true crime junkies, we view crimes through a different lens.
So walk through the door of some of the most notorious true crimes with us and discover how sometimes the scene of the crime has its own story to tell. Well, hey, y'all. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Crime Estate, which we should note is part 2 on our series on the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. So if you haven't listened to part 1, hit pause, go back 1 episode, because we lay a lot of groundwork in that episode, and I think you'll want to listen to it first. Now, I'm Heather, and I'm joined as always by my fellow Dallas realtor, Elena, and our dear friend, producer, and commentator, Melanie. Hey, ladies.
Hey, girls.
I missed you guys so much.
It's been a really long time.
Yeah. For our listeners, it may not seem like forever, or it may seem like forever, but it's hard being working moms in the summertime. We have the best of intentions, but life gets busy. But I think that now that it's late August, we are going to get on a good routine.
Yeah. I'm so glad we're getting back into the story today. We recorded about a month ago.
Yeah, I think so. Part 1.
Yeah, we had the summer travel schedules, and I've been ready to get on to part 2.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Hopefully our listeners also didn't take a month pause. I think we pre-recorded enough that we could keep dropping things a little bit. But as a quick refresher, so on our last episode, we talked about how OJ and Nicole met. We talked about the properties that they both lived in at the time of the crime. If you'll remember, these 2 properties were only 2 miles apart, and OJ's property was referred to as Rockingham in the subsequent trial, and Nicole's property was referred to as Bundy. Now, we discussed why Kato Kalin was staying in OJ's guest house and how the 3 knew each other, as well as the really sad and sort of random series of events that led to Ron Goldman being at Nicole's house the night of the crime. And then last but not least, we went through the timeline of the night of the crime up until noon of the following day when OJ lands back in LA. He drives home and he is handcuffed by the police at his property before he is taken to the police station for questioning.
So thank you for that quick recap for listeners, but also me, because I was thinking, where did we I couldn't remember. So that's where we left off. And I learned so much from that episode. Like it's one of those that you think that you know everything about, but there was so much media speculation and attention to the case. It was coming from all over. So it's nice to have you condensed that down for us.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do it.
That.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those stories that there was so much of a cultural pop culture reference, but it doesn't really necessarily. I didn't know the story the way that I thought I remembered the story. I was on a walk around White Rock Lake a couple mornings ago with a friend, and I was talking about the story, and my friend was like, "Oh yeah, because that was crazy that Nicole and Ron Goldman were dating," and I'm like, "No. Stop! Like they actually weren't dating at all. It's kind of, a weird, random scenario, wrong place, wrong time."
Yeah, you're right. And like you said, to both of your points, it was sort of a media circus and there was a lot of misinformation. And initially, OJ hired the renowned attorney Howard Weitzman. Now, it's Howard who was responsible for convincing the police to make sure OJ could go from his house to the police station without being in handcuffs, which is that sets the scene for everything, right? Because if the image on TV is him being hauled away in handcuffs, that gives viewers one impression. Whereas if he's just getting in his car and driving to the police station, that gives viewers a different impression. So smart play on his part from a PR standpoint. But less than 48 hours later, Howard Weitzman actually resigned from OJ's legal team, stating that he was just too busy to take on the case. Now, interestingly enough, after the trial, Howard gave an interview in which he said the jury had reached the wrong conclusion. I love your face that you just made. He said, and I quote, that it is my opinion based on time spent with him before the incident occurred, time spent with him after the murders occurred, and observing at arm's length the facts brought out during trial. So he went on to tell the reporter that he didn't regret not representing OJ and that being in the eye of the storm is not something I needed.
Okay.
All right.
It's really interesting. Do you think he thought OJ was guilty and just didn't want to represent him?
I mean, I think you have to wonder, because I did a little bit of research on this guy. He went on to represent some other very high profile celebrities and other like eye of the storm type cases. He notably Michael Jackson, Paris Hilton, Sean Diddy Combs, and Justin Bieber. So like he wasn't afraid of the limelight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that Michael Jackson just himself was as much in the eye of the media storm type of trial as OJ. So I don't know. That's interesting. It makes you read into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So fast forward to attorney number 2, Robert Shapiro, who I think is the attorney we sort of all mentally associate with the case. Robert Shapiro was hired on June 15th, and the following day, the families held the funerals for Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. I bring that out because, like, I wanted you to understand how quickly all of this is moving, right? Very, very fast. And at some point in that 48-hour window, O.J. Simpson was charged with the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Why, you ask? Let's recap a little bit some of the evidence that the police had pointing to OJ as the guilty party. Okay, so first, when police arrived at OJ's home in Brentwood to notify him that Nicole had been killed, they found a small smudge of blood on the outside of his white Bronco, which was parked on the street, not inside the gates of the property. Now, we're showing you a diagram of the Rockingham estate. You can see where the Bronco was parked. Why he didn't just pull it in and park it behind the gates, I don't know, because that, for me, brings up the question of like illegal search and seizure, or I'm saying these words like I know what they are. But I'm like, if you're just walking down the street and you see blood on the outside of somebody's car, that's one thing. If you are in their garage and see it, that seems like another thing.
Well, you watch a lot of Law and Order.
I do.
Mentioned that a couple times, so.
Yeah.
It is odd, especially in this type of neighborhood that's really kind of fancy, where people, I bet the neighbors don't love like lots of people just parking on the street.
That's a good point, Melanie. I hadn't thought about that, but I bet not a lot of people in Brentwood park on the street.
Yeah. I mean, like, even like people that are visiting someone, I mean, they have these like long driveways. You know, you have to get behind the gate to do that.
Well, and you can see in this picture, like, it's a big U-shaped driveway.
Yeah, that's
so
what I kind of
if
remember.
I had that driveway, I would have just pulled right up to the front door and parked in front of the front door, especially after dark.
Right.
Yeah,
Because we know, if you remember back to the previous episode, OJ and Cato had gone out for like a McDonald's run or something about 9:30 that night. So he had been out that evening and come back.
But so what conclusion are you both drawing that he left it? It was just stupid.
I mean, I don't know that
or that he was trying to sneak back in later. I don't know.
And I think that's part of it, because one of the other pieces of evidence that they have was Cato Kalin told the police that he reported hearing thuds coming from behind his guest house the night of the murders. And when the police searched there, they found a bloody glove that matched the glove found at the crime scene. So, I mean, all of this evidence is sort of lining itself up here. It would come out later in the trial that Nicole purchased this pair of isotoner gloves, just like the ones that were found at the crime scene and behind Cato's property at Bloomingdale's in December of 1990. They found a shoe print at Nicole's house that matched a pair of shoes OJ owned. In particular, y'all, there were only 299 pairs of these shoes that had been sold in the United States at the time of the crime. I should have looked up, I don't know what size shoe OJ Simpson wears, but I bet he has big feet, being a football player.
Yeah.
And then at OJ's Rockingham estate, they found a pair of socks with blood on them. And they also found Ron's shirt fibers on these socks. Now, detectives also found it suspicious that when they notified OJ of Nicole's death, remember, he was in a hotel in Chicago. Was it Chicago? He had flown up there for like a Hertz deal. So he's on the phone with them, and he didn't ask how she died or if the kids were okay, which is very interesting. However, he did ask if the children had seen Nicole's murder.
Oh.
And of course, last but not least, there's the violent history that the two share that was, pretty well documented, I think, both in the public and with authorities. And now, while you or I probably would have been hauled to jail in handcuffs with the sirens blaring, Simpson's fame did allow for some concessions as it pertained to his arrest. Simpson's attorneys arranged to have OJ turn himself in at 11 a.m. on June 17th. And had he done so, this story may not have grabbed the public's obsession quite the way it did. Because 11 o'clock comes and it goes, and OJ just doesn't show up. He doesn't turn himself in as promised, and by 1:50, detectives declare O.J. Simpson a fugitive. By 3 o'clock, the LA Police Department gives a press conference in which they state, "This morning, detectives from the Los Angeles Police Department sought and obtained a warrant for the arrest of O.J. Simpson, charging him with the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Lyle Goldman." Simpson did not appear. The Los Angeles Police Department is right now actively searching for Mr. Simpson.
At this point, the public doesn't know that he's a suspect. And they have the press conference, and that's, I guess, when it's...
I think so. Because, they had to assume.
They certainly knew that she was murdered.
Yeah, it's very ominously thundering outside. I wonder if our listeners can hear that. Murder. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to go back in time and figure out what people knew when, because like I said, it was very fast. Mm-hmm. I think they had to have, though, because he hired those attorneys within 48 hours.
Right. Yeah.
I think people probably gave a lot of leeway to him because of his celebrity. That people are not wanting to believe that he did something wrong, and they don't know the history that we now know and the violence that we now know. They probably would love to imagine it. Like, you don't want your favorite celebrities to be bad guys or gals.
Well, and I always forget. I remember that he was a football player, but he was in movies. That was really what he wanted to do as part of his career. Remember, initially, he told the very first team that drafted him that if they didn't want to pay him what he wanted, that was fine. He would just go to LA and be in the movies.
Right.
So,
and he had actually been retired for a lot longer at this point in time than I recalled.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he retired about the time him and Nicole got together. So in one of the documentaries I watched, though, it said that the detective that gave this press conference later said that he heard this audible gasp from the crowd when he finished that sentence, because he was like, the Los Angeles Police Department is right now actively searching for Mr. Simpson. That's
shocking.
Yeah. It'd be like somebody come out and be like, the Dallas Police Department is right now actively searching for Taylor Swift. And you're like, what? How is that possible? All right. So behind the scenes, though, the police and Simpson's attorneys are in constant communication at this point. OJ's attorney, Robert Shapiro, goes on TV and he begs OJ to turn himself in for the sake of his family, for the sake of his children. And he asks him specifically to surrender to any law enforcement official at any police station immediately. Now, fast forward, we're about 5 o'clock this same day, and OJ's good friend, Robert Kardashian, yes, that Kardashian, Kris Jenner's first husband, I assume it was her first husband. It's definitely her husband before Bruce. I don't know if she was married before him or not.
I'm not sure yet.
Okay. Anyway, Kris Jenner's husband goes on TV and he reads one of 3 letters that OJ left behind before he fled the police. Many felt that the letter read as a suicide note, and in part it reads, "To whom it may concern. First, everyone understand I have nothing to do with Nicole's murder. I loved her, always have, and always will. If we had a problem, it's because I loved her so much. What the outcome, people will look and point. I can't take that. I can't subject my children to that. This way they can move on and go on with their lives. Please, if I've done anything worthwhile in my life, let my kids live in peace from you. I've had a good life. I'm proud of how I lived. My mama taught me to do unto other. I treated people the way I wanted to be treated. I've always tried to be up and helpful. So why is this happening? I'm sorry for the Goldman family. I know how much it hurts. Nicole and I had a good life together. All this press talk about a rocky relationship was no more than what every long-term relationship experiences. All her friends will confirm that I have been a totally loving and understanding of what she's been going through. At times, I have felt like a battered husband or boyfriend, but I loved her. Make that clear to everyone, and I would take whatever it took to make it work. Don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life, great friends. Please think of the real OJ and not this lost person. Thanks for making my life special. I hope I helped yours. Peace and love, OJ.
Very gaslighty.
It is gaslighty. That's a good thought on that. Yeah. He's choosing his own narrative. So at 5:51 that same day, a call is placed to 911. It's a little unclear to me if OJ himself places the call or if the call comes from OJ's friend, AC Callings. Now, if you'll remember from our first episode, OJ and AC go way back. They were childhood friends, and AC actually dated Marguerite, OJ's first wife, before they got married. And then they went on to play football together, I think, high school, professionally, all sorts of things. And so on this 911 call, AC tells police that OJ has a gun and is threatening to kill himself. Now, I think it's easy to forget because this story is so familiar to us that at this point in time, remember, OJ's a fugitive and the police don't know where he is, but because they've made this call to 911, they're able to pinpoint the location that the 911 call is made from. And they realize that he is on the freeway. Now, quickly reports start coming in that O.J. Simpson's in a white Bronco on the freeway and helicopters are flying overhead to film the chase scene, which is being shown live on air. I mean, I could just picture it. It's one of those 5-10 moments in our lives where you're like, where were you when you saw this happening?
Right. I remember my dad watching, or we were watching it all together, and he kept saying, not OJ, not the juice, not OJ. Like, I know. I was like, oh. Thinking about it now, I was like, oh, at the time, I'm like, what's going to happen next?
I remember exactly where I was when the trial ended. I do not recall where I was when the chase was going on, but my husband vividly recalls where he was when the chase was going on. So it's interesting, and I feel bad for all of our Gen Z listeners that this is cultural touchstone points that they're like, huh? What are you talking about?
They have their own.
Yes.
Yes.
They know where they were when they found out that Taylor Swift yesterday got engaged.
So I should note, now remember we have two Cato Kalins. We have the dog. Well, we have two Catos. We have the dog, Cato, and we have the house guest, Cato Kalin. We also have two white Ford Broncos. And I don't think I knew this until I started researching this case. So we know that OJ drives a white Ford Bronco and it was parked outside its house. It's the one that they found blood on. That's not the white Ford Bronco that is in this chase.
Oh.
This is Cato Kalin's, or no, I'm sorry, not Cato Kalin's, AC Cowling's white Ford Bronco.
They had matching white
They
Bronco.
had identical Ford white Broncos. I had no idea. When I read this earlier today, I was like, no.
Isn't that crazy?
That is so weird. And that's it's just a weird period of history. And nowadays, it's at a true crime museum in Tennessee. They actually have this Ford Bronco as a museum exhibit.
AC Cowling's Ford Bronco.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They're too close. Sharing women and...
Women in cars.
Yeah, women in cars. Yeah, I don't like that.
So these news reports start coming out telling the public, OJ's armed and dangerous. They can see from the helicopters that he's got a gun. He's in the back of the car. But despite this, his fans start lining the freeway in order to cheer him on. Commentators on TV are claiming, hey guys, OJ has a gun to AC's head. He's making AC drive. Speculation starts running rampant. And people think maybe he's trying to evade arrest by fleeing the country.
Oh, yeah, because he was headed south, right?
Uh-huh. Okay. I think so. But in my head, I might be getting this fleeing the country possibility confused with the Scott Peterson one.
Oh.
Well,
because there was talk of both of those.
It was the slowest chase ever. I mean, we're not talking about a high-speed police chase. This was like a 30-mile-an-hour chase on the freeways.
It was a leisurely drive down the freeway. But later, Simpson says that he was actually headed to Nicole's grave. And I don't know if AC was taking him. I mean, probably you think this is 2 days post her death. You're not just out there driving yourself. Your friends are taking care of you. AC's probably there. He's like, if you want to go to Nicole's grave, I'll take you. And I think that's sort of how some of this comes about. Okay, so AC calls 911 again. He tells them, he's like, I'm okay. but tell the police they just need to back off. He tells them that OJ is threatening to kill himself and that he just wants to see his mother. So the news crews continue to cover the developing story, and an estimated 95 million people watched the chase on TV. Is that not mind-blowing?
Insane.
It famously interrupted the broadcast of the NBA Finals, with many stations showing the two timely events in split screen.
Yeah, so I have a little to add here. So this is June 17th, which is my younger son's birthday. And every year, on June 17th, my husband, who's a true sports aficionado, he likes to remind us of all the things that have happened on June 17th. Now, that also happens weirdly to be, there's lots going on. The day was huge in the sporting world, with millions watching TV. So like you mentioned, yes, there was the Houston Rockets finals with the New York Knicks, but it was also the 1994 FIFA World Cup opening. It was the New York Rangers celebrating their Stanley Cup win in New York City with a big parade. Arnold Palmer played his final round at the U.S. Open at Oakmont. So this is a weekend event, and everyone's watching Arnold Palmer's last round. And of course, the finals, as you said. So think about it, a weekend event where everyone is already having whatever sport they're interested in, watching something, and then this breaks in.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. So at one point during this police chase, which goes on for several hours, OJ calls Nicole's dad. And her dad says, please don't kill yourself. Specifically, he says, Juice, you have 2 kids. Don't do this to them. And detectives get OJ on the line at some point, and they ask him to please throw the gun out the window, and they are pleading with him to turn himself in. Now, 2 hours after the chase starts, the infamous white Bronco pulls into that U-shaped drive at OJ's Rockingham estate. He sits in the circle drive in front of the house for almost an hour before getting out and going inside to talk to his mom. It should come as no surprise, ladies, that OJ is arrested by the police who are waiting at his residence for him. And in the car, they find $8,000 in cash, a loaded gun, a change of clothing, a U.S. passport, family pictures, and a disguise kit with a fake goatee and mustache, which I think does lead to the question of, was he trying to run, or did he just not want people to recognize him at the grave? But I mean, you're O.J. Simpson. You're a big man. Like, I don't know how you disguise yourself so people don't know who you are at your ex-wife's grave.
Right. Yeah, that's tough. It's tough because had you not told me it was AC's Bronco, I would have thought that could possibly be normal things that people might have in their car. I mean, he's
right,
loaded.
It's
It's
right. $8,000. It's just like pocket change.
Cash, yeah. And a gun. I mean, yeah. A change of clothing, the passport, family pics. What does that mean? Is that like a picture of somebody's,
I have a family picture in my car right now. Yeah.
And the disguise game, again, he's like super famous. So maybe that, but he was not in his car. So it's stuff that he packed up. And so I'm going to go with, I think that he was trying to flee.
Think so.
Yeah.
Or was at least leaving that possibility open.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So AC was also booked into jail for felony for aiding a fugitive, but the charges were later dropped because he cooperated with police. And OJ did have a gun to his head most of the time.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go into a ton of detail about the trial because that would turn this into a 50-part episode. But I want to hit a few of the highlights. So on July 22nd, 1994, O.J. Simpson pleads not guilty, saying absolutely, positively, 100% not guilty to the murder charges. And then the public is introduced to Judge Lance Ito, who is assigned to the case. Now, when the jury for the trial is selected, it's made up of 10 women and 2 men. And because race comes into play in this trial, I think it's important to note that of those 12 people, 9 jurors were Black, 1 juror was Hispanic, and 2 jurors were white. 9 were high school graduates, 2 had college degrees, and 1 did not hold a high school diploma. And this next part blows my mind. So once the trial began, the jury was sequestered for 8.5 months. They stayed at a hotel 5 blocks from the courthouse and were under strict rules about what they could and could not do outside of the trial. They weren't allowed to lock their hotel rooms. They weren't allowed to go for a walk alone, and they couldn't talk on the phone without a deputy listening to their conversation. Meals were served cafeteria style, and no alcohol was allowed. All TV and movies were approved for their viewing in advance. I'm sorry, if you're going to sequester me for 8.5 months, there better be wine in my room at night.
Yeah. And what I want to watch on TV. And I want to talk to my family without you listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of things. Nope.
I want to know if there were conjugal visits. Was that allowed? Probably not.
Ew.
I mean, it's 8.5 months.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
The
I
way
mean,
you
are
said
you not
that.
allowed to go home on weekends to see your family?
No.
Oh, come on.
No. You couldn't even talk to them on the phone without somebody listening. They're not going to let you go home for the weekend.
I'm going to guess there were no conjugal visits because you couldn't lock the doors. Or if there were, you wouldn't want
I'm
to.
positive there were not, but I just want to point that out. All right. So a high-profile celebrity accused of murder, of course, equals a very high-profile trial. And O.J. Simpson put together what the press called the dream team to defend him. Namely, Robert Shapiro, F. Lee Bailey, Johnny Cochran, Robert Kardashian, Alan Dershowitz, and several others. Now, famously, Shapiro arranged the surrender of Eric Menendez in 1990 and was later sued by Phil Spector for failing to return a legal retainer. So this is at least the third Crime Estate episode that Shapiro has appeared in. F. Lee Bailey infamously defended the Boston Strangler and Patty Hearst. Robert Kardashian, who is a good family friend of The Simpsons, and like we said, father to the famous Kardashians that you know today, had actually let his law license lapse, but he renewed it in order to help serve on OJ's defense team. It'd be like you and I, if we let our real estate license lapse, but you were like, oh, I've got to sell my house. I need the dream team to sell my house. And I probably required a little more effort from him to renew his law license than for us to renew our real estate license. And then Alan Dershowitz went on to work on the Jeffrey Epstein case, as well as on Donald Trump's legal team. So I think it's safe to say that he did indeed hire this dream team of attorneys to defend him against these murder charges. And look, you don't get to be an attorney of this stature without having a little bit of a big ego, or a lot of a big ego. And the personalities, let's just say they didn't mesh very well together. There were a lot of big egos wanting to be the top dog, maybe.
I didn't know they didn't get along.
At one point, Robert Shapiro told the media that he and F. Lee Bailey were no longer speaking to each other. Can you imagine?
That's insane.
And at this point, Johnny Cochran takes over as the lead defense attorney for O.J. Simpson. Now, when the trial begins, prosecutors Marsha Clark and Christopher Darden make passionate opening statements claiming that O.J. Simpson killed Nicole Brown Simpson out of jealousy, and that he thought that if he couldn't have her, no one else could either. And this is where we're going to bring some real estate back into this story. So about a month into the trial, the jury is taken to visit both of the properties at the center of the crime, OJ's Rockingham estate and Nicole's property on South Bundy Drive. I think this is so fascinating. So imagine this. These jurors, they leave the courthouse in a bus, typically used to transfer inmates in between facilities. And so you have the jurors, you have the prosecution, you have the defense teams, you have OJ himself. All in all, it is a 14-vehicle motorcade with a police escort. Reports liken the security measures to something you would see when the president or heads of state traveled.
So they're going on a field trip. I'm just trying to picture this. So they're going on a field trip. Is this normal for juries to go on field trips like this?
I think we've had a few.
Have we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I do think we probably have had one or two, but it just seems so weird because, when we watch movies, because, movies are everything, you see the jury in a courtroom. You don't see them going on road trips.
And our world is so virtual now.
Yes.
It's so easy. If this trial had taken place today, would they have done a drone shot and showed, or would they have done a video? But again, technology wasn't quite that advanced. Probably physically being in person at the property was the best way
I mean, I'm a visual person,
Yeah.
so I can appreciate that. And I also can appreciate that these people were sequestered for a very long time, so they're looking for a little drama. They're
Right, let's get out of here.
They're looking for anything to shake it up.
Okay, so their first stop was at Mezzaluna. Remember, that was the restaurant where, near Nicole's house, where she had dined with her kids and family the evening that she was murdered. And then they stopped, and Ron Goldman worked there. Mm-hmm. And then they stopped at Ron Goldman's apartment. And at both of these stops, the jurors just stayed on the bus. So essentially, I think they were just trying to highlight like the location, how long it took to get from point A to point B, the distance between the restaurant and Nicole's house, the distance between, could Ron have left the restaurant, gone to his house to change, come back to Nicole's house, as they're determining the time frame of the crime. So they really didn't need to go inside there. And it sounds like the defense definitely had more of a reason to push for this field trip and for visits to the properties, but the prosecution went along with it. They wanted jurors to see, again, like I said, how close the properties were to each other, because they're working on a really tight time window from the time OJ dropped Cato back at the house after going to get McDonald's to the time that limo driver showed up to pick up OJ for the airport. So they wanted to, show that OJ could have left his house, driven to Nicole's house, murdered her and Ron Goldman, and then driven back to his house in time to meet the limo driver. Now, on the other hand, the defense had their own motives, and they actually wanted the jury to enter and go inside the two homes. The prosecution really didn't want that. They just wanted them to see the distance and the time travel. OJ's attorney, F. Lee Bailey, said it's very helpful to a jury listening to a witness to have seen a crime scene if they look at it themselves. I don't know. Maybe that quote's a little messed up. But then he goes on to say, I've long been in favor of jury views. And so the third stop of the excursion was at Nicole's property on South Bundy. Nicole's family was adamant that OJ would not be allowed inside the property out of respect for Nicole's memory. And so OJ stayed in the car while jurors toured Nicole's house. At this time, her condo is actually for sale. All of the furnishings had been removed and it was completely empty. I'm quoting now, but as Lawrence Schiller and James Wilworth observe in American Tragedy, the emptiness of the surroundings reduces Nicole to a, quote, an impersonal abstraction. So essentially they walk in, they don't feel the life that Nicole lived in the house. It is a blank slate. They have not even staged it. There's no art on the walls. It's just this empty box. And so it just doesn't feel like a home, essentially. Mm-hmm. In part, the defense wanted the jury to tour the Bundy home to see the small space where Ron and Nicole were murdered and how close they actually were to the children's bedrooms. Now, the defense had a different ulterior motive for having the jury tour OJ's house at Rockingham. There, they leaned into painting a picture of who OJ was, or at least how they wanted him to be perceived. The tour included his bedroom, closet, and a trophy room, something that the defense particularly did not want shown, as it was sort of a shrine to OJ. Now, the realtors listening to this podcast can appreciate something about this house tour. It was staged. Fires were lit in each fireplace, and $1,000 worth of flowers arranged the day of the visit. Additionally, a Bible was laid out in the living room of the house. Most outrageously, the defense, OJ's longtime personal assistant, Kathy Randa, and daughter Arnell, changed the aesthetics of the home. I have to quote from reports in order to get this right. It says, they spent some time planning nothing less than a racial makeover so as to establish OJ's African-American identity at Rockingham. This was not simply removing a nude portrait of his white actress model girlfriend, Paula Barbieri, from the fireplace in his bedroom and placing a silver-framed picture of OJ and his mother, Eunice, on his bedside table, or hanging a Father's Day card from Justin on his door for decency's sake. All pictures of white women and OJ and his white friends were removed and substituted with pictures of OJ and black people. A print of Norman Rockwell's 1964 painting, which we're showing, if you don't know what this is, it's the painting called The Problem We All Live With, was brought to the house and hung prominently. It was thought of as an example of something depicting African American history that would reflect well on Simpson. Now recall, the majority of the jurors were black, so reportedly this staging of the home was done in part to play on their emotions, to impress upon the jury, both his staggering wealth and accomplishments. The Associated Press headline stated, "Tour season as a plus for Simpson. This tour would seem to play up the everyday luxuries of Simpson's comfortable celebrity lifestyle in a way specifically designed to evoke feelings of Black community." Whew. That's a lot.
That was a lot.
I mean, I don't think it's any different than not having him led out of his house in handcuffs to go to the police station. You are painting a narrative. Mm-hmm. Now, in this case, they did change the narrative a little, I guess.
Well, yeah.
But that's their job. That's what you're paying them for. I guess, did nobody tell them they couldn't change anything? That's the curious part to me.
Well,
the fact that the judge allowed, there was before and after pictures. That clearly showed. I think the judge made them cover up a life-size statue of OJ that was on the lawn. I'm like, with a sheet. Like, they had a few small things that they were allowed to do. But let's be realistic. Painting the picture of the sterile, empty condo of hers against this seemingly warm family home that plays upon, his rags to riches lifestyle and all of his accomplishments, which is a source of pride for many, many people. I don't know. It is definitely storytelling.
Well, is that, I don't know anything about law, but is that a fault of the prosecution for telling someone, whomever owned the condo, to not put it on the market or have a judge say, don't do anything with this property, leave it as is? Is that a failing on their part, perhaps?
I don't know. It's a good question.
It's not fair.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point, Melly, you were saying that they did have to cover that life-size statue of him, which, side note, who has a life-size statue of themselves? But he had a trophy room, and they were not allowed to go into the trophy room. They just had to walk by it and look in. So they weren't allowed to spend time in the trophy room. But really, yes, they set some rules and parameters, but not in a way that made a lot of sense, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the tour of the crime scene actually happened pretty early in the course of the trial, which went on to be a spectacle for several months. Detective Mark Furman is accused of being a racist. And this is only 2 years after the Rodney King riots. So, the LA Police Department already had this tarnished reputation. And the defense argued that evidence had been planted or mishandled to implicate OJ in the crime. The jury would later hear old taped recordings of Mark Furman using racial slurs and bragging about his enforcement of police brutality, which contradicted his claims under oath that he wasn't a racist. So that definitely went in OJ's favor. And indeed, criminologist Dennis Fung admitted on the stand that proper protocols were not enforced at the crime scene. Now, this is still the early days of DNA evidence. The trial took place 5 years before the first episode of CSI aired. And jurors were informed that only 1 in 170 million people would have the same genetic characteristics as the drop of blood found at the crime scene. But over 9 weeks of testimony, 108 exhibits of DNA evidence, including 61 drops of blood evidence, were just overwhelming. They were tedious, it was exhausting to the jury, and the defense launched this reasonable doubt defense of the evidence by criticizing how and when it was collected, stored, and transported. And on June 15th, 1995, a year and 3 days after the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, prosecutor Christopher Darden presented evidence to the jury that O.J. Simpson owned gloves just like the ones found at both the crime scene and O.J.'s house. A pivotal point of the trial, prosecutor Darden asked O.J. to try on the gloves in front of the jury, and he struggles to get them on over his hands. In front of the judge and jury, he declares that they are, quote, too tight. And Johnny Cochran tells the jury, in what has to be one of the most historic moments of the trial, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Less than 4 months later, the jury deliberates, y'all, for less than 4 hours, and they return with a verdict of not guilty. They have been sequestered for 8.5 months. They're ready to get the hell out of Dodge. 4 hours?
Yeah.
Like, can you even do the, hi, I want you to be foreman. This is what we're supposed to do. We're going to read the jury charge. This is how we have to vote. Like, 4 hours in a jury room is nothing.
Because remember, these jurors, even though they've been together, they're not supposed to talk about the trial any time that they are together up until the deliberations.
All right, I didn't put this in our outline, but I'm going to ask it anyway before we get on to what happened with the houses. Do you think he did it?
100%, I think he did it.
Melanie?
I can't imagine he did not. I mean, I thought so at the time. The more I've learned about it, the more I think so. And if anything, there hasn't been more doubt brought into the story over time. That's where, if there was more doubt, more technology, more advancements over the years, ulterior, viable candidate, but none of that's occurred.
For me, it's more what happened after this, all this stuff.
The If I Did It book.
Yes,
And
that's it for me, yeah.
But didn't his children kind of stay with him?
I think so.
Yeah.
But I mean, they lost their mom. You sort of have to believe your dad didn't do it, or you've lost both parents. I mean, we've seen that happen a lot. It happened in the Houston one, Doris Angleton, where it was pretty clear their dad was involved, and both of those girls defended him into adulthood,
Yeah.
So many stories we've seen that to happen. And as much as I think, they have to know more, they're closer to it. I think there's emotions that get involved as well.
Right.
My kid likes to be right so much, he would be like, oh no, she did it. Let me show you why. I'm going to give you the 12 reasons. All right. So, gals, do you want to know what happened to the properties?
Of course.
All right. So, according to a true crime historian, mystery novelist, and LA tour bus operator, a lady of many talents, she says, if a crime is notorious enough, there's a very real danger that the structure will be demolished or altered to preserve the property value and deter sightseers. But when a crime passes far enough into memory, there's something quaint and almost sweet about a crime scene.
Okay, I totally believe that. And I think of that a lot of times with some of these crimes that we do. And when we talk about, would we live there? And if it's an older crime, I'm much more inclined to say yes, just because I feel like, there's been things that have happened and new memories built. But if it's something recent, I'm much more inclined to say no.
Okay, so you agree.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go
I
ahead.
wouldn't call a crime scene quaint ever, but I think it happens often, like when they've turned the crime scene into museums or shrines or tributes and stuff. I can see how that is fascinating.
Oh, the Lizzie Borden story, for example. Yeah.
All right, so get this. After the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, that Brentwood townhouse, Bundy, where it all happened, did become sort of this like morbid tourist attraction. And if you remember, they were actually murdered on the front lawn, not inside the house. So it's something that would be easy to walk by and visualize because you can see the space where it happened. And so, people wanted to go by and take a look at it for themselves. Now, that house itself, it was a 4-bedroom, 4-bath, or it is a 4-bedroom, 4-bath townhouse. It's about 3,400 square feet, so a good-sized townhouse, built in 1991. Just 5 months before the murders, it sold for $625,000. I'm curious, I wonder if that's OJ buying it for Nicole as they were getting a divorce.
I think it was.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah.
But after that tragedy, no one wanted anything to do with it. It sat empty for 2 years. Also probably because it wasn't staged and it looked like just an empty shell, right? When it finally sold again, it sold for $525,000, a full $100,000 less than before the crime. The new owners, they were not trying to be like a part of any true crime tour. They completely redid the landscaping, especially like the area where their bodies were found. They basically made it unrecognizable and they changed the address. It used to be 875 South Bundy Drive, but now it is 879. So if you're ever in the neighborhood looking for 875, good luck. It technically doesn't exist anymore.
We've heard that lots of times where they've changed the address after these crazy murders. But I wonder if that happens now, less now that we have Google.
Well, it may be even more now because, I mean, yes, you can still find it. But I mean, we have access to all sorts of address databases, yada, yada. And sometimes we still have to call Mel and be like, hey, we can't find this address. So, just if you're just typing in the wrong address, there is like an input output kind of algorithm that, maybe that does help.
I think you and I, we could find it, but you're right. Maybe the very casual observers. I think that back, 20, 30 years ago when they were changing some of these addresses, much, much harder. I think nowadays when there's more publicity and stories, and we've even seen real estate articles about an infamous home coming on the market, and they're saying, and it used to be 123, but now it's 132.
So, but even with all these changes, the house didn't exactly fade into obscurity. It sold again in 2006 for a whopping $1.72 million. And decades later, people still come by. In 2014, when the 20th anniversary of the crime was marked, locals were saying that tour buses literally drove down the street just to do this slow roll past the house. People would stop out front and take pictures like it was some kind of grim landmark. Reminds me of the gal we talked to who lived in the house where the little girl was abducted on the poly class. And, she said people would come by on the anniversaries and report from her front lawn. And when the People versus O.J. Simpson came out in 2016, that FX series, if y'all will remember, interest in the house spiked again. More visitors equaled more attention. And, it's never really not going to be associated with the deaths of Nicole and Ron. Now, of course, this is a weird little mix of real estate tragedy, pop culture, all tangled together in LA. And I'm going to go out of our normal order here a little bit before we jump into what happened to OJ's house. I want to know, Bundy, would you live there? Would you list it?
No, I don't think I would do either, actually.
Really? Why?
Well,
I mean, I know why you wouldn't live there. Let's be clear, yeah.
I think it's really hard. That's a hard one. Not because of my feelings towards what happened there. Is the reason why I wouldn't list it, but because of the publicity around it. And I don't think I want to have anything to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Melanie?
I would be more inclined to live there because the crime was outside and not inside the house. But from a listing perspective, I think it's a little bit of, hindsight's 20/20. But the fact that this property was going to be so high profile, you're going to have a lot of looky-loos trying to book, tour appointments that really maybe aren't actually in the market for it. It seems like it could, waste a lot of your time. And of course, hindsight, we know that it took 2 years to sell and it sold at a severe loss. Other than that being, a good deal for the buyer, that probably seems like it was a lot of work for not as much of a return.
I don't think I would live there. I wouldn't want to walk past my front lawn every day and visualize that. I think because we do have such a mental image of what happened there because of the media. I would list it 100%. I agree with your concerns about listing it. You would have to be very thoughtful about, screening's not the right word, but making sure buyers were legitimate buyers and not just voyeurs. But yeah, I mean, it's not the house's fault, and it sounds like it's a cool property, and I would have staged it for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, that wasn't really a thing though back then, was it? Maybe there
weren't pictures blasted all over the internet.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Rockingham. It turns out Rockingham is gone, literally. Now, if you remember, OJ bought the place in 1977 for $650,000. At the time, it was this big, beautiful Brentwood estate. But after everything unraveled, there were the murders, the trial, the civil suit, he ended up losing the mansion in foreclosure. That happened in 1997, the same year he was hit with the $33.5 million wrongful death judgment from the Goldman and Brown families. Now, remember, they never saw most of that money, and a bank scooped up the house at auction for $2.6 million. It was eventually flipped to an investor for nearly $4 million, And that's when it was decided, they were like, this house has to go. So the entire mansion was demolished in 1998. They also changed the address. What was once 360 Rockingham became 380 Rockingham, and a brand new home was built on the lot. Now, Rockingham, much like Bundy, has become sort of this weird landmark. Tourists would come by, locals drove past it. It was a part of every LA crime tour. And, also he fled the house. He came back to the house in the Bronco. While the crime didn't necessarily happen there, so much of the coverage of what happened post-crime did. In 2016, in this crazy twist, the LAPD announced that they were testing a knife that supposedly was found buried on what used to be that property. But it didn't lead to any new charges, of course. Simpson had already been acquitted of murder, and because, double jeopardy, he couldn't be tried again for the same crime. Now, the house was scheduled to be torn down, and reporters asked OJ if he had any feelings about it. He brushed it off, and he said, it's not my house. I could care less. I walked out that door, and I've never been back. Rockingham is history. But he did go back. The day before the demolition, witnesses say he did a quiet drive-by. He didn't get out of the car. He just rolled past slowly, looking at the home one last time. One person who saw it said he looked, quote, bummed, like he was saying goodbye to a part of his life, or maybe watching it disappear forever. So Rockingham may be gone. It's bulldozed. It's rebuilt. It's rebranded. But I think for many people, it's always going to be the O.J. Simpson house, right? So let's talk about this one. Would you live there? And this is like a 2 or 3 part question. Would you live there in the house it was before it was torn down? Or list it? Would you live there, list it in the new house? And I need to remind you from episode 1, his youngest daughter with Marguerite drowned in the pool at the Rockingham property, in case that ties in to your feelings about the property. Yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
I would list it.
Then and
after.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I would live there both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Melanie?
I mean, hypothetically, if I was a realtor, I would list it. Living there, I'd go back and forth just because of the notoriety of it. And I mean, if I'm in the market for a multi-million-dollar, Brentwood home, I would want my privacy and would not be wanting to deal with, the looky-loos. But if I could get behind that and I could afford a really good security team, sure.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And remember, this is an estate. It was gated on 2 sides. I think you could have done something landscaping-wise to sort of give you a little more privacy from the street. I have to say, I would not have lived there prior to it being demolished. The baby dying in the pool would be my biggest. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to swim in that pool. I wouldn't be able to walk by that. That would be my problem. I would list it. And I would live in the new one, and I would list the new one. Mm-hmm. I'm with you, Melanie. I would want to make sure I added some privacy, but I think there's room to do that. And in this hypothetical situation, I'm a billionaire who's buying an estate in Brentwood, so I would have the money to do the landscaping for privacy. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Well, that's what I've got for today. Our listeners have been asking for O.J. Simpson since we started the podcast, so I appreciate everybody's patience because it's a story that we all know, but we wanted to bring some different light and some different flair to it, and so that really took a little bit of research and some time, and we wanted to do it right. So hopefully y'all have enjoyed it. If you love the podcast, please go leave us a 5-star review. They totally make our day. 4-star reviews make our day, but we prefer 5.
Yeah.
Hey, to be a fly on the wall, we have a group chat, and whenever we get a good review, we forward it back and forth to each other. And when we're on our day jobs, it does make us, I think it makes all of us really happy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and if you really love the show, you can also support us by buying us a cup of coffee. You can visit our website, crimeestate.com. There's an option to donate there. Along with some fun insider info, you can join our gated community and be the first to know when new episodes drop.
Yes, please go check it out. But we should be honest, your guys are probably buying us a glass of wine. Yeah. Don't forget to grab your own beverage of choice and check out this episode on YouTube where you can see our smiling faces. And we love it when listeners engage with us on social media. So come follow us in all the places.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Love you.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for listening and being a part of our Crime Estate family.
If you're curious about today's featured crime estate, you can find additional photos and details from today's episode online at crimeestate.com or on Facebook and Instagram by following at Crime Estate Podcast.
Have a crime estate we should cover? Let us know. Shoot us an email at crimeestatepodcast@gmail.com. Until next week.